Welcome to Mind Over Marketing, the show where we break down the marketing, sales, and mindsets that separate the winners from the wannabes. The host, Todd Starr, has been on the front lines of business, sales, and marketing for himself and for his clients for the last 10 years. Todd says, "I believe that success in business isn't about doing more, it's about seeing differently." So today, we're getting inside the mind of somebody who truly thinks differently. They've built a successful business, but more importantly, they've had to outthink, outsell, and outmarket their competition to get to where they are. And we can all learn from their wins, but more importantly, from their failures to make our businesses better.
So welcome back to Mind Over Marketing, the show where we unpack the real stories behind business success, challenge the cliches, and get inside the mind of people who actually know what they're talking about. I'm Todd Starr, and today we're sitting down with someone who's not just a marketing mind, but a movement in her own right. So Sally A. Curtis, she's a business growth strategist, a speaker, a content marketing weapon with a serious talent for turning ideas into assets. She's been the bums on seats queen behind sold out events, a trusted advisor to overwhelmed speakers, and a quiet force helping entrepreneurs uncover their inner genius and amplify it through strategic partnerships and content that actually connects. So thanks, Sally, for joining me. Can you start by telling anyone that doesn't know you who you are in your own words and what problem you solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in my own words, I'm a feisty, bite sized content crusader. So, I work with those content experts, the people who have got their own brilliant inner genius in many, many forms of content. And I help them turn their long form content into bite sized content and bite sized forms so they can share it across their social media. And we create a library of reusable brand assets so they can build their consistency without the fatigue and frustration.
Nice. So you mentioned fatigue, and I've seen a couple of things online about content fatigue.
Mm.
So why is content fatigue real? How does it actually show up for people, and how do we fix it?
Yeah. Well, I use the saying, just coming on out this side of COVID, that when I was back then speaking around my topic, I used to say, you're fatigued and your clients are fatigued, and we need to solve both of those problems at the same time. So, from a speaker, expert, coach, consultant, they learned the new habit. Not necessarily a good one, of creating new content all the time, and they get stuck on a different hamster wheel, and they're going around and creating content, creating. So I was seeing them fatigued and frustrated in that manner. But because our lives have got so busy in general, and certainly before COVID and after COVID, we've really noticed how busy we've got, and we're starting to think, I want to do things differently. So we're starting to look with different perspectives. I'm seeing and have seen a real shift where people want to be able to get those highlights, those top elements really, really quickly. And this is where bite sized content comes in. You can still write your long form content, but ultimately, content's engaging when your consumer can consume it even on their worst day. So if I'm having one of those days and it's a hissy fit day, then if any email looks longer than about 3 sentences, I'm not touching it. And if anything else looks longer than 3 sentences, I'm not touching it. And so when I talk about somebody else's fatigue and bite-sized content, if you can give them a snapshot of something in a really short formed bite-sized way, and they can consume that on their worst day, when they're having a good day and that triggers again for them, they can then go back and find the long form content. So it's a way of directionalizing, but supporting your audience from the aspect of being there for them, even when they're having a really bad day and they just want to jump in and jump out again.
So how do you do that? Is there like a framework or a formula or something that you use to help people recognize um, what to prioritize in terms of content or hooks and opening lines, and how do you break through that and get
Yeah.
attention?
Yeah, great question. From my perspective, I always look for somebody else's inner genius first. So their inner genius quote, teachable moment, story, whatever that thing is that they often don't recognize because they're too close to it. So being somebody that comes in with fresh eyes, we often can't read the label when we sit inside our own jar. So it's very easy for me to find all of the relevant pieces.
Mm.
How we utilize that strategically is by understanding what the client's overarching theme is or what their topic content buckets are. So they might have 3 to 7 content buckets that they speak on. So if we know strategically what their topics are and their consistent messages are, or etc., and we know what they're selling into, then we can work out how to utilize that piece of content and what sort of call to actions that we can then directionalize it so we can lead people on a journey. And I'd love to say this was all my cleverness, but this was something I witnessed when I worked for lots of the really great speakers early in my career when I was the bums on seats girl. I saw them use that bite-sized content in such a way to fill up their events. It was just something that I adopted because I saw it work so effectively.
Mm. So, how do you, holistically, high level, how do you break through maybe psychological barriers that your customers have around feeling like they don't want to show off? So
Yeah.
a lot of people that I work with start with, a feeling of like, I don't want to be a show off. It's not all about me. It's about my customers and so on. And I know how I deal with that. But how do you, when somebody comes to you and says, I don't want to be in the spotlight, how do you navigate that and change their belief?
I suppose for me, the belief change is a little bit around the fear, and it's the fear of showing up. It's the fear of being loud and noisy, and what will people think? And in some cases, it's also the fear of giving their best stuff away.
Mm.
They don't want to give that thing away that they get people to pay for, because if they give it away, they don't think they're going to pay for it. So there's probably 2 answers to that. So let's answer the first question around belief and the ability to show up. A lot of the people I work with are already at that legacy lever stage. They're already comfortable with that. But for the up and coming ones, it's around if you're not ready to do video yet, then let's do a social media tool that's got your image on it, and positions you as the expert in not all in all cases, because that starts to feel a little bit like, look at me, look at me, look at me, and no one wants that.
Mm.
But for us, we create what we call visual campaigns. So we would have a campaign that's positioning them as the thought leaders, etc. Then we would have a range of content that would position their viewer. So we believe that the image positions the viewer. So if their audience is nurses and that sort of thing, we would have imagery of nurses. So the scroll gets stopped because they recognize themselves in the mirror. So it's about having the right blend and not doing the woo, buy my stuff, I'm here. You need to have that educational element. And most people, when they're in their early stages, when they get stuck in, oh, I need to do content, will automatically go to doing promotional content. And then that icky feeling starts to kick in.
Mm.
So we talk about, yes, let's create some different types of campaign types. And the next hurdle those people have is, how do you showcase and share the behind the scenes stuff, the more family related stuff, or the insights that you have at a personal level. And we talk about how to capture those ideas or those moments and then, choreograph and create them into content. They might sound and seem timely when we post them, but we've probably caught them from a couple of weeks ago. It's, again, just putting little systems in there to simplify some of those scary elements.
Mm.
And just coming back to the fear of giving my good stuff away, that's probably the next biggest thing I'd face with those new ones, and that's a case of you. And I remember from my own experience when I went to an unpacking my brain session with one of my mentors and was fetal position in tears for 2 days straight. Hated every moment of it, because he kept saying to me, well, what does influence mean to you? What does that really mean? What does that really mean? And I didn't know, because I just did it instinctively. But learning the art and the ability to unpack your thinking, which does involve carving out some quiet time where you can either brain dump or write stuff out or whiteboard or post-it note, giving yourself the ability to unpack your thinking and get stuff bubbling up, it starts to create the abundance awareness of how much is in here and how much more there is to come. So when you're hanging on for dear life, it's time to unpack because you have way more energy. And you've only at the tip up here and your gold is all down here. So the goal is to get to that gold as quickly as possible for those people.
Nice. Yeah, I think like information's everywhere, right? I heard Daniel Priestley talk loads of times, but recently just information's kind of largely worthless or a bit commoditized, like it's very unlikely that anyone's going to like accidentally pitch Apple. Like you're just doing what you're doing, and like probably people might have heard it before. You might be able to frame it in a unique way to help them recognize it differently, but it's not like people are sitting on like secret IP that like would be impossible to get anywhere else. It's like what matters is implementation. What matters is the person actually taking action on that and making a decision rather than just being more aware of new concepts.
Correct. Yeah.
The other thing you said was about my interpretation of people feeling like they don't want to show off, and you mentioned maybe there's a softer approach to that with some images and some written content and just start the process before you're ready to fully go out there. And again, another Daniel Priestley thing was about not being in the spotlight, but becoming the spotlight. So rather than it being me, look at me, look at this, it's like you just guide people, to the truth via you shining a light on things and showing them the way rather than, and then you're more of like a trusted advisor, a guide, as opposed to like, a thought leader or an expert in anything. It's kind of like, I just feel like that's much more of an endearing approach. Do you agree?
I do. I love the word, and the word that really shines and feels for me is guide. Because as service-orientated experts, we actually want to guide. We want to give people forward movement without us. We might give them an insight and they'll have forward movement. And at some point, they may come and buy our services at some point whenever it becomes relevant to them. But in the meantime, we are that guide that gives them forward movement, whether it's something we've said, something we've shared, or experienced and then, shared it in that way. We are that guide, the wind beneath other people's wings, so to speak.
Yeah, I think words are very, very important. When you use them and how you use them, certainly in a sales context or a marketing context, like everything's amplified and magnified, and you can say the wrong word at the wrong time or the right word at the wrong time and cause conflict. I think I can't remember where I heard this, but there was something in a podcast about saying oak tree to somebody. I can't remember where this was from, but he said even something as simple as asking someone to think of an oak tree seems like just an inanimate object,
Mm.
but could quite easily elicit two different responses. I might have got married under an oak tree, and you might have a friend who hung themselves in an oak tree.
Yep.
So there's, or a grandparent that's buried under an oak tree. So you have very, so you'll never know what other people, the full breadth of everyone's experience, but you can mitigate the risk of saying the wrong thing through just, like you said, a bit of self-awareness and a bit of an audit on how you show up and present.
Mm.
I think this is going to be an endless plug fest for Daniel Priestley, but on the Entrepreneur Accelerator, there was a guy we got introduced to in the first couple of weeks called Topher Morrison, I think it's called.
Martin, yeah.
And he had a video about exactly that, about using guide instead of other words. He specifically said, never use help. Never use I can help you. Because that elicits a response in the reader that like I'm helpless. I don't really want to be helped. I feel like I want to be guided. I might want to be shown something, but I don't want you to help me. That's like quite a demoralizing place to be if you're responding to that. So yeah, I just think that's interesting. From your perspective, what's the biggest opportunity over the next 12 to 18 months for small or medium business owners in this kind of content marketing space?
To be themselves and be happy with that, and to own that in whatever way that that comes out for them. And my example of that is, and I don't know whether we actually ended up having this conversation, the conversations we've had, is I gave up horse riding for event horse riding and started racing ferrets. There's a whole story there, and I've got a whole workshop around ferret racing and how that marries over the marketing. And I have had that for I don't know how many years. And, if you get me in a room, glass of wine, even a cup of tea, I'm likely to go, full tilt ferret stories with you because I have a lot of fun telling them. But I would never, ever, ever tell those stories in public, in a public arena. But then I did one day because of that glass of wine, and everybody just sort of really leapt at it and really embraced it. And I got such a shock to that. So every now and then, my little inner ferret comes out in some posts. I've adopted more of that inner ferret, that cheeky, naughty, playfulest, adventurer that goes on discovery. Brought more of that into my personality that I now let out. So I think showing up as yourself in your naughty, playfulest way, or in whatever way that you want to shine, is the individual that we are as humans, and we don't need to be cardboard cutouts of anybody else in any way, shape, or form now. So we have an opportunity to embrace whatever weird works for us, and that's the key thing. When it works for us, and everybody else will love it and gravitate it as long as we're celebrating it well. My 2 cents worth in a weird way.
Is it is a ferret just a really small horse?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. To the bird.
When it comes to mindset then, um, where do you think that comes from for people? If it's an imposter syndrome or a fear of showing up or a confidence or a self-belief thing, whatever it is that's blocking them from putting themselves out there and sort of hiding behind a brand or a company sort of persona, where do you think that comes from?
I reckon it's definitely a mindset thing, and I reckon it's a generational, I'm gonna call it a generational quote. So my generational quote from my blessed family is, "Children should be seen and not heard."
Mhm.
So I was seen and, seen as the, ready, sitting on the couch, desperately wanting to get into trouble and get it up to mischief, but I just sat there. So, we just sit there. We don't effervesce. We don't find our grace in whatever that is, and I think that's the opportunity. So that's my generational, quote that I remember, and I think every generation's potentially got a different version of that.
Mm.
But that's the one that I think for my age group sort of tends to shine out so much. Oh, you should be quiet. Just be quiet. Um,
Yeah, mine was a bit of class clown stuff at school. I'm dyslexic and I didn't enjoy the school process, so I'd find any opportunity to fuck about basically and make the class laugh, and I was fairly happy taking risks, so and I wasn't that afraid of the punishments they could dish out, so there wasn't much to prevent me from messing around, and I think and that was, like, met with harsh criticism, right? To you showing off or you're being a class clown, and that does not go hand in hand now with the world we live in terms of trying to make more noise and get more attention. Like, that is the game, right? In terms of marketing, like, you have to stand out against everybody else, and, um, there's gimmick ways to do that, and then there's, like, more genuine, authentic ways, but if you're still living with that kind of part of you that is has been publicly shunned or shamed into, like, that getting attention is gross or that it's arrogant or egotistical, it's like, it's gonna be very hard to market yourself. I think that's something that's why I'm doing this podcast really, to try and do it in a softer, more gentle way and just break down that initial barrier of, like, being out there on the internet, talking to like-minded people and sharing ideas. No one's gonna knock on the door and put me in jail for that.
no.
Like, I'm not getting grounded or put in detention for that. I can just share my insights and ideas, and if people don't like it, don't watch, and if you do, keep
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I think that you've said a couple of key words there is that the share and with other people. So if I go back to my example is, I did not I might have put my hand up, but I did not speak in class until I was 17. So I was very quiet for a very long time, and people wonder why I talk a lot now. Whereas now, and I had to learn to speak up. I had to learn to find my voice,
Yeah.
and that took a lot longer. But now through the podcasting and collaborative groups and masterminds that we all have the opportunity to be with online now, we have a real opportunity to share, and through that shared insight, we actually do touch each other's lives, and as a result of that, magnify that wisdom and that knowledge and those opportunities out to other people. I mean, we connected over Dan Priestley and the KPI gang, or the Dent gang as they are now, and that we got excited over some of the shared wisdoms that we'd learnt from them. We wouldn't have had that opportunity, well, that opportunity to me feels relatively new. And I think that is the new opportunity, is to, find those people that you connect with, that you can collaborate with, that you enjoy being around, you enjoy shining the light for their journey, and they to you, and then together collectively you shine the torch on the greater community. That's the opportunity we have, which is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. There's a bit of like, people are quite predictable. I think, like, and I think my biggest worry doing this type of content was that internet haters, or that like, that you would say something that you didn't quite extrapolate on enough, and that people will pull it apart and say you're an imposter, you're an idiot. And I think some of that comes from um those past experiences, but also I think it's maybe a fear of, like, hate from people who would likely be jealous, right? If I think it's like, it kind of, like, comes from below. Like, no, but you're not gonna, like, see my content and tell me it sucks, because you're in that space, right? It's like, so I think you'll only get hate comments, and then you'll go on their profile and they never post anything and they don't put themselves out there. So it's very easy to hide behind anonymity
Yeah.
and then hate on others for putting themselves out there. But all the people that I've spoken to that are doing content, creating videos, sharing their ideas and their insights, like, I've seen no form of negativity from those people. It's only people that, like, are too afraid to do it themselves, right? And I think that's interesting. But one question I wanted to ask you was, if an alien came to Earth right now, and they gave you a microphone and you said something, you got one thing you can say, and every single person on the planet hears it in that moment, what would you say?
Take your own bloody advice more often.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Because we don't, and I think we had this conversation, and I had this conversation earlier. You're giving, and you're sharing, and you're guiding somebody else, you're helping them through something, and then you go, "Oh, I'm just gonna make a note of that for myself. That's a really good reminder for myself." So that's that whole, take your own advice, and it's not because we're being arrogant, it's because we've actually forgotten. And it's till we share that experience with somebody else that it actually comes back for us.
Mm,
So it's, yeah, take your own bloody advice.
yeah, that's very good. Um, what do you think about AI? We don't have to go too deep on this, but how do you think that will, or do you agree with me that that will remove a bit of authenticity? Somebody posted on LinkedIn the other day um, about AI, and the way they framed it was that it would be just only positive and beneficial. And whilst I'm using a lot of AI and it is making me more efficient, and it helps me extrapolate my ideas and stuff, there is a big threat in terms of competency or
Mm.
competence. I don't know. I'm dyslexic. I don't know which one it is, but
Both of those
with
words.
being capable, I think, I see lots of people post things online, and then I talk to them, on a private call, or I meet them in person, and then they're nowhere near as knowledgeable or competent as they pretend to be,
Yes.
or as they're alluding to be. So there's a little bit of, like, trust erosion there in terms of when you're reading people's insights. Like, is it really theirs,
Mm.
or has it come from, like, AI and general knowledge, and is that okay or not? And then certainly in terms of hiring people and CVs, like it's so easy now to just plug in a couple of sentences of who you are, and it will build out like a remarkable CV that makes the employer feel like you have a certain level of understanding of the role.
Mm,
So it's sort of tricky to wade through that on LinkedIn and see like who really knows their shit
mm,
and who knows AI to make it look like they know their shit.
yeah.
Like, what do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of people that are using AI, and you can see it. I think there's a lot of and we were all early adopters, and I was guilty as charged. So you know what I'm saying here, has been guilty as charged as well. Where we went, oh my god, AI is just going to make that so much easier. Let's just post all that stuff up there, which we've all done. And I think now people are AI aware. And they now look for the human, which is why those behind the scenes and I've just done something with the family, and this is what I learned from a business perspective. That storytelling ability, people are going to look for that more now, and I actually think, and we're starting to implement this, that we will actually do less content and more of that content, because if we can connect as a human being, I can then have a conversation with somebody and show them how you can guide them through things in that perspective. So that's my take on it personally. I absolutely love it from a, brainstorming, because like you, I love a good brainstorm, and I can talk to it now and it talks back to me and it will dig a bit more deeper. And I've got I've got two or one dear friend and a story to tell. One dear friend who's utilized AI, spoke with it for a number of hours to build out how he was going to add $10 million to his business that next 12 months. Through AI, he generated a 400-page blueprint, and it's basically implemented it. So there's those extreme guys that know how to do it and do it really well, and that story just mind boggles me, because I've played that game with it. And then I've had another conversation with somebody, which was a bad experience, which goes back to writes a really good CV or makes you look like an expert when you're not. They hired somebody to come in and do a training session for their organization. And within about 15 minutes, they worked out that this guy was not the person and could not deliver. And literally had to ask him to leave and bring somebody else in. So, that people are having those experiences where they get, whoa, this is beyond hinky feeling. This is just plain old not right. So people are going to be suspicious isn't quite the right word. That they've got we've all got a BS radar. We've now got a AI BS radar that's growing and learning more. So people are going to be much, much more discerning about the human, and then about their ability to be the human they say they're being. Ability
Yeah,
they are.
and that's already happening. I think we're already quite quickly evolving to screen stuff better like I can see everybody knows the classic emails that come in with, you know, um,
3 dot points and a couple of emojis.
yeah, I hope this I'll find you well. That's like a dead giveaway, right? But in terms of like LinkedIn, I think so people are then are reacting to that and like re-changing things, and really that's how I'm using AI. I'm using AI for either menial tasks that the content's largely irrelevant, but it's got to be there. So kind of legal things or proposal bits that's kind of just boring. It's irrelevant about my ability to do it. It's just purely filling in. It's just doing the movement of typing, right? It can speed it up. In terms of like LinkedIn content, I'll use it occasionally because I'd be really good on Twitter if Twitter was a thing over here.
Yeah.
Like X or it's just not like a platform that has ever made it this far over here. I don't think it's big in America, and I use it to consume content, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know anybody personally that uses X to do anything.
Yeah.
But I feel like my stuff's good in like little bite-sized nuggets, like short one-liners and things is what typically is good for me in terms of wrapping things up in like a succinct statement. But so I use AI to try and build it out. So I've got an idea of what I want and I'll seed it with that. And then I'll question back and forth with it a little bit and build out a bit more structure. And I'll typically end up with a post that initially the skeleton of that post was written on AI from my idea, but then I'll almost change every word. So I'll probably keep the format, but I'll just rewrite it in my tone, and if there's spelling mistakes in there, that's fine. I can't spell. So that's, another little
Shows humanness.
bit, so I'll use it to just kind of like grow that. And I feel like that's fine because that's what I used to do with humans.
Mm.
I would talk to my wife Hannah and we would discuss an idea and her coming back and forth with me and you'd build it out a bit more. So I think it's like it's just replacing constantly nagging my partner really to listen to my theories.
Yeah. And I use it in a similar way to capture ideas, especially those storytelling, personable ideas, because I have those experience and I have a wow moment, but I'm too caught up and then getting on to the next thing that I don't have the chance to sit down and write it. So we've started, I'll open talking ChatGPT, chatty, and go, in the car. It was like, just had a great experience, was feeling really flat today and felt like I needed to be around, some joy and some happiness. So I went down to, Salisbury tree climb where you climb through trees. I went there. My experience and reason for going there was because it's super adventurous, because I'd just done that with my son Rory a month or so earlier. And I knew people would be there. More importantly, I knew there was a coffee shop going to be here. So as I'm just talking to you, rattling off random BS stuff about what I just did was what I did into ChatGPT. And at the end of it, and now I've just given you all of that chatty. At some point, we're going to turn that into a post for LinkedIn. And he goes, "Oh, would you like me to do that now in preparation?" So it just did that. And then when I got home, at least I'd recorded something that I could look at later and utilize, because I had the opportunity to record it in a manner that I could record it on the run. So I think that in itself is an opportunity to be more personable and more human, because being personable is a difficult thing for me. So I found a way that I can utilize AI to assist with that.
You're also using it with your voice as opposed to typing it.
Yeah.
So there's probably less abbreviations. You will actually extrapolate the full thought if you're saying it more than you would just recap it in one quick 4 or 5 word sentence. So it's probably getting more detail actually in the way you're using it to make it more authentic than if you
Yeah,
type.
if I feel it's very rambly, but what
Mm.
came out of that was like, wow, that's pretty good. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I do think not many people are using AI to critique them. So I actually use it. I call it like anti-AI. So I'll use it actually to do the opposite of what most people are doing. I'll give it a post I think is good and tell it to rip it to pieces.
mm,
Tell me why this is shit. Tell me what I've missed, and like there's a funny podcast on LinkedIn somebody did where they had two AIs debating each other.
yes, yeah.
Um, and I was just playing around with my son last night. He just didn't want to go to bed, and I was messing around on AI, and I said, "Do a debate." So he was debating what I said to ChatGPT, debate my son Louis, um, on if video games are good for you or not. You take the side that they're not good for you. He'll take the side where they are good for you, and then debate back and forward. And it was actually really interesting to see that play out. I think I'm gonna use that a lot more on different campaign ideas and marketing strategies where I'm gonna tell it what I'm gonna do and why I think it's good, and just get it to tell me all the things I'm missing and why it might not work. I think that's just gonna make the idea stronger. Um,
I've
so
got a
yeah.
friend that uses a prompt, and it's something along the lines, I won't be able to open it quick enough, which is, please don't sugarcoat this. So it gives it really specific instructions, like, I need you to not sugarcoat it and tell me where I've gone wrong in here, 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 and here. So it's
Yep.
really, and yeah, it comes back. I didn't like it the first time it came back, let me tell you.
Mm.
But with that, and then going into that to and fro of it, yeah, it was good.
That's
His
that's
voice,
probably that's probably quite a good way to break down that barrier, the beliefs we were talking about earlier
mm,
around, because there's no judgment with some code. Who cares? It's not a person that's gonna be ripping you out. It's probably good to use that as a bit of a therapist. "This is why I'm not doing this," and it will just tell you what it is, and nobody knows about it. And that might be a safe way to actually discuss your, you know, self-belief problems, and it will probably uncover more than a therapist would because it has perfect memory and access to all of the information.
Well, that was actually how my friend started his 400-page blueprint. Was he was just talking about, here's my this is what's happening in my business. This is what we've done historically. This is what we'd like to do in the future. This is where I feel I'm getting stuck. Blah blah blah. And he literally, and that was why I hadn't used the talking around version before. But he literally did it as a talking around. He went for a 2-hour walk and just spoke to Chatty for that time, and then asked him to create that into an action plan and blueprint, and away he went.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm really sorry about this, but my son's come home and he's playing Xbox behind us because it's school holidays now.
With it, bless.
I don't think he realizes I'm recording a podcast, so I'll have to cut this bit out. I was hoping not to have to edit anything.
We'll say hello.
Hey, Lou. I'm just recording a podcast. Do you want to say hi to Sally quickly?
Hello.
We've been talking about you, right?
How are you?
Good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, very good. Did you have fun debating with Chatty last night about video games?
Yeah.
You won, and then I said, tell him he's a genius and he's the best debater ever, and it did.
Oh, good. Very well. Awesome.
Right, I'll just finish this, but try not to make any noise for a minute, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not winning.
I didn't actually hear him at all, so it's probably only you that did.
Yeah,
Bless
okay.
you.
It's probably picking it up on the mic. Let me think how we can segue that then, and we can wrap it up a bit. Okay. I've got one more thing I want to do here. Let me get my pen because I wasn't ready. No, there it is. Okay. Okay. So overall, do you think AI is, and this is shit, AI is good or bad? So overall, how would you recap then, small and medium business owners and maybe fear of AI or skepticism around AI? What would you say to them to embrace it?
Go and sit in a dark corner somewhere where no one can watch, no one can see you, and just go and play with it. In a very cheeky manner. That's
We're still talking about AI.
yeah, we are absolutely
Right, you are.
AI, but a little bit of innuendo helps people see something there. And I say it that way because I've got one of my friends that was messaging me, "Hey Sally, I just need to do some brainstorming around something I'm delivering. Can you do blah blah blah?" Because he knew I was using AI effectively. And then he said, "I've gone to the dark side. I've just got it." And he goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe that I've, waited that 12 months before I use this." He's only using it as a brainstorming tool. He's an incredible speaker and educator. But until you've tasted chocolate, you don't know how good it is. Until you've, experienced it and had to play with it, you don't know how good it can be. I didn't know how effective the audio version was until I played with it.
Yeah.
So I think there is opportunities for all of us in every business, in every walk of life, to utilize it for our own individual selfish purposes that serve us. You just need to discover what they are for you. And then as a result of that, it'll ripple into your business and you'll find all different ways you can actually utilize it.
So what you're saying is, if you play with your AI too much, you won't go blind?
No.
Okay.
Because you'll just discover a whole lot more. You might not get any implementation work done, depending on how much you're, if it's too much of a bright shiny. But as long as you're utilizing it and then implementing it, I think you're on a winning formula, because everything comes down to implementation.
Yeah, true. So last one for you, in terms of like, how much does your work blur into like actual sale, like tactical sales stuff? Obviously, it's like content positioning and marketing as a sort of subset of sales, I suppose. But what would where do you go in terms of like sales?
Okay, so I always say that we have content that creates conversations that then eventually creates conversions.
Yep.
So I believe if you've got content on there, the content's job is to help people consume you, because if you're easy to consume, you're inevitable to buy.
Yep.
But if they're only consuming you and not conversing with you, whether that's you messaging each other on Facebook or them or where the platform, and you supporting their comments back to you and vice versa. So if you're not having a relationship, you're not going to get into a proper conversation if you don't have the opportunity to converse and meet with somebody. You don't have the opportunity for conversions. So everything that we try to do and we instill in our clients is you create content to help the greater good in whatever way is relevant to you. And my role is to help give you the content to do that. But I am going to Sally nag you about, connecting and conversing with your audience. Because if I'm doing all of the done for you stuff, then you have no reason not to be building a relationship with your clients and your audience. That's your role. So that's always my Sally nag is whatever you do, you need to be building those relationships, and then those relationships will go into whatever avenue and angle they need to.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I find lots of the clients I work with, like they've never really done marketing, or they've done it poorly, or not at all. And then obviously that creates, if they do it well, a scenario where they've got leads in a way they're not used to. So if they're normally a referral business or a word of mouth kind of thing, now suddenly they're doing some social media or some ads or a podcast or whatever. They're now getting people that they haven't got that intermediary between them that says, "Oh, able to warm them up." They're going in relatively cold with a new lead.
Yeah.
It blurs a bit more for us now into like a bit more sales kind of coaching as well. Like when you get these leads, here's likely where they're going to be at, and here's how you need to actually attack that conversation. And it's not telling business owners to suck eggs. It's just if they go into those relationships how they usually would, where they're already in an authoritative position and they're now having to build rapport quickly, that they'll often mess it up or miss opportunities. And I think so much of sales can be seen as like pushy or tacky, or that there's some playbook that like always works. And I definitely think there's like an importance on sort of semantic structure and like how predictable people can be. You've got to use this stuff ethically. Like if you know that you can phrase things in a certain way to get a response that will help you know the truth, you've got to know that actually this person has symptoms I can fix. Otherwise, you are just manipulating them. But there's an example. I want to do it with you right now to finish the pod.
Go for it.
I'm writing a word on this piece of paper. It's no longer than 5 letters. Before we start, do you know what I've written on this paper?
No, not yet.
Good. Right. So that is an example, right? A very childish example of, if I set this up and I ask you the right question with the right words, there is a binary response. You either know or you don't. If you say yes, you're going to lie, and it's unlikely you'd lie. So you're going to say no because you don't know what's on there. So it's like, I normally use that with people when I'm talking about sales, as like, if you can now understand that as a principle and a concept, and you can extrapolate that over knowing when they'll get in their own way, predicting when they're likely going to lie, or when you bring up something that might be sensitive, how they're going to interpret that. And you just phrase those questions with a bit of reverse psychology and some different semantic structures. It will just speed up and accelerate the process of a yes or a no.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that, and this, I'm laughing at myself as I was sort of thinking about this. This is one of those take your own advice things. And I will say we are in the middle of it, but we are actually only in the middle of it because it's not yet completed. I was chatting again to the gentleman that's had this extraordinary results with his AI, and we were talking about that sales process and breaking it down, as you've explained, when you know what some of those things, problems or whatever hiccups, pause points are going to come into play. And we were having the conversation, do you want to give somebody a 6-minute video that gives them the whole insight and hope they're going to read it? Or do you want to just give them 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes? And I went, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And, it makes perfect sense, but we all do that. Let's just do a 6-minute one and just get it up there and out there. But from a relationships perspective, that's just like, woohoo, let's just go and get married versus let's go through the courting process. So there's a little tip there, and add
Yeah.
you've just said.
Yep, that's really true. And nobody, you would never try and get a date or start a relationship with someone the way that most people sell their products to sell. You would not walk up to somebody not expecting you, tap them on the shoulder at a bar and say, "Here's a ring, let's get married."
Yeah.
That would never happen. You first look at each other a bit, suss each other out, maybe see friends or the circle, the social. You then like introduce yourself nice, and you would never go in there and just start talking about your life. You would ask them questions, right? You would first say, "Where are you from?" "Oh, I used to live there," and you'd build a bit of rapport, and then maybe you meet again and again. It's like too many people just rush in, drop to the knee, and they're like begging for marriages, and that's just like that's not how humans work. So I think that's why people get into trouble. Same with the marketing stuff you were saying. Too much hard sell, too much, pushy instant DM once you've connected with someone with, "I do this IT solution and you need it," and it's like it's too much. People just people don't respond like that.
Get away, get away.
Yeah. Well, Sally, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I feel like we could do loads of these and never run out of stuff to talk about.
I totally agree. Thank you so much.
And yeah, thanks for having me on your show. And yeah, let's keep in touch. Hopefully, we can do some work at some point.
Yeah, that would be amazing. While you're now that we've got to the end of it, so to speak, one of my dear friends and clients who's 85, and we still do work together. His daughter's dyslexic, and she does see it as a problem. She's probably in her mid-50s and still sees it as a bit of a problem.
Sure.
Peter was so excited. He rang me yesterday after he'd come back from golf and watched our episode. He said, "I hope you don't mind, but I recorded that little bit about the dyslexic superpower, and I've sent it to Claire, and she came back with, 'Oh my God, that's such a great way of looking at it.'" So you've touched and impacted somebody straight away. So I wanted to share that with you. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
That means a lot. I guess I need to lean more into that. There's a bit of nerves because I'm not a super genius about dyslexia, but I certainly want to try and make more of a mark in that space and dispel some of the myths and be hopefully be a bit of an example of how it hasn't held me back. It's actually accelerated my growth in many ways. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that happened.
Yeah, so am I. So thank you. I'll let you go on to the next one, and I will look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon.
Thanks so much, Sally.
All right, you take care. Thank you.